Welcome back to another episode of Eastern Shore Politics. As you can tell, I am not Billy Earl. My name is Carl Anderton, otherwise known as Delegate Cornbread, however you'd like to say it. So I'm filling in for Billy. He asked me to come in and do an interview, and so I thought to myself, who would be the perfect guinea pig or test subject to do an interview with? And so without hesitation, I thought of Mary Beth Carozza. Why not? You know, she sits next to me on the House floor for the past 4 years, and she's heard many ramblings about bills and things that are probably not very coherent. So I figured this would be a good practice run. So anyway, Mary Beth.
Carl, I have been looking forward to this for quite some time. When I heard that you were going to be the host and on this program, I said, we're going to have some fun with this. And I would like our viewers to know that Carl Anderton is very humble with his approach. He is the chairman of our Wicomico County delegation. What does that mean? Well, a lot of people may or may not know this, but we have 5 delegates in our Wicomico County delegation and 2 state senators. And Carl is so effective in keeping us all together. All these events that we're invited to, and we come and we like to present our proclamations with all 5 of us signing those. Well, number one, Carl takes the leadership role on making sure that we know about these events, that we will have some representation there, and he's made very clear that he can't do it all, so we often share those responsibilities. So I first want to give Carl credit because in addition to the events, we also work on our legislative agenda together. And Carl is very good about knowing where people are on different committees, so he's like, okay, Mary Beth, you're on appropriations, so once we get this in Governor Hogan's budget, then you're the watchdog. You make sure you protect that priority, and then we're over here on environment and transportation, and we've got to basically kill the bad bills over here. And then we have Chris and Johnny on economic matters, and they're looking out for our economic development and our business priorities. So we have people positioned. Sharice Ample-Hughes on the Health Policy Committee. So the good news about this is that we have people positioned, that it's been Carl's role as the chairman of the delegation to bring us together and to hone in on those priorities and then basically make sure the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. So as humble as you are in that role, I wanted to make sure the viewers knew that you've taken a leadership role, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not me, it's Kendall. She does it all, and Bunky before her, and Brittany, and but it's all of us together. I've had the experience to sit next to you for 4 years and see just how focused, driven, and prepared you are when it comes to any issue. We see thousands and thousands of bills, and you have notes on every one of them. And it's just amazing. And I've taken and absorbed a lot of that. And I actually took some notes myself for the first time since 10th grade in high school. So it's been neat having that opportunity. I've never been around somebody who's just so can singularly focus on something, and then at the same time kind of spread out and have a focus on multiple issues. See, with ADD, I can focus on 40 things at once, but I can never focus on just the one thing. So I'm kind of all over. But seeing you do both, it's kind of like a superpower. But so. I know you really well, but a lot of folks may want to know a little bit about your backstory. So I know that you played tennis at Stephen Decatur. You have promised to play tennis with me, and we're still waiting for that time, hopefully after the election. I played tennis once, was not good at it, but better than golf. So I'm, anytime you want to school me, just let me know. But so.
Sure. Our family moved from Baltimore to Ocean City when I was in 5th grade. So I thank my parents every day that they moved us from the city to the Eastern Shore of Maryland. The first school I attended down here was Ocean City Elementary School, which has been really exciting because I've been back there so much, both when I worked for Governor Ehrlich and we rededicated the new Ocean City Elementary School to as late as a couple weeks ago when Dealey Insurance sponsored a financial program with the students, with the comptroller, some of the elected officials. Mm-hmm. So to see that come full circle is exciting. Our family had the first fast food drive-through restaurant in Ocean City called Beefy's. And that's where I learned my faith and my work ethic from my parents, because the way you make it in a family business in the season is you work really hard during that season. So I was working full-time in my family's business starting in 6th grade in the summers. And I also saw that my parents were job creators. What do I mean by that? They gave hundreds of teenagers their first job at Beefy's.
So Beefy's is where, what's there now? Cowboy
17th Street, so
something?
exactly.
But I knew it as the party block.
Right. The A-frame building is still there.
Yes, it had the Volkswagen Beetle on top or somewhere. Yes, so that was Beefy's restaurant, and that was the first fast food place.
Drive-through restaurant
Really?
Before McDonald's.
You beat McDonald's though.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. So anyway, as you work.
But I think back on those days. First of all, we had so much fun. In the height of the tourism season, we would have lines wrapped around that building. And I watched how my mom and dad were very strategic. They had my younger sister on the drinks because that's a little bit easier to do. I was put on the cash register. I think they wanted a family member on that cash register. So I learned that. And again, I also saw that they offered these positions, really first-time jobs for teenagers for so many of my friends. But I also learned now in today's environment with all the regulations at the state and federal level and what these small businesses, family businesses are up against today, I'm not sure Beefy's would have made it in today's environment. So that's made me very determined in my role now in the House of Delegates in the Maryland General Assembly, going to the state Senate, to be sensitive when we start talking about legislation, regulations. What does this really mean on the job creators, those small family businesses that, are really trying to make it and are providing jobs in our communities? So that experience, who would know that all those years ago working in my mom and dad's fast food place, Beefy's, that experience would have such a profound impact on now how I approach my public service. Right.
No, you're right. And that's another thing that we have in common, because I worked at the McDonald's in Princess Anne, burning French fries and chicken nuggets. They put me in drive-through one time. I got 2 phone numbers in the drive-through, and they said, no, you can't work in the drive-through anymore. So it's interesting. You're right that work ethic acts as established at such a young age will definitely carry you through to where you are.
But I want to make clear, I was also having a lot of fun growing up. Look, when you grow up in Ocean City, again, as I said, I thank my mom and dad every day that we moved down there. We also had a beach stand. It was the Carozza and Bollinger family, so we all had our jobs, and then we would come in between shifts and really working the beach stand. How hard can that be? So it was a great place to grow up.
Stand?
So a beach stand is where you do the rentals of the umbrellas and the boogie boards and the sand chairs. Gotcha. And we were set up at 42nd Street. That was the C&B, Carozza and Bollinger Beach Stand. So, think about that experience. And I just also wanted to share my connection with Salisbury as well. Growing up, I was very interested in tennis, and I was a pretty decent player. And in order, though, to have any real competition, you had to come to Salisbury. Now, this was the era when Bill Reardon really put Salisbury and tennis on the map in the whole nation. Remember, he was basically sponsoring Jimmy Connors. He brought these big tennis tournaments to Salisbury. Right. And I came over and played on a regular basis at the YMCA right here in Salisbury under C.J. Travers. And he worked us. I think he thought, oh my gosh, I have all these teenage girls that think they're going to be the next Chrissy Everett. And so what he did is he just drilled us. We would play tennis 5 to 6 hours in the hot sun in the summer on those hard courts. He'd have us doing wind sprints, drills, playing matches. And when we would start to, complain a little bit and say, can you ease up on us? He would look at us and say, you told me earlier this season you wanted to get a tennis scholarship to help pay for your school. You better spend a couple more hours on that tennis court if you think you're going to get a tennis scholarship. He worked us, but it really paid off, and we had a lot of fun.
I could tell it in what you do now with door knocking. It's August, 102 degrees, humidity. We had a lady. I don't know if I could do it anymore. You said, if you want, no, I'm just playing, but no, but you're driven in the community like that, and I see with people joke and they say they see me everywhere, but you're also there, and you have a much bigger geographic area to cover, and to be able to go from in events to Ocean City to Pittsville to Willards, up to Delmar, down to Fruitland. I've seen you go down. I've seen you hit the circuit, all 3 counties within 2 hours, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure you're exceeding the speed limit.
Now.
But that's okay, girl. It's our secret. She's really, but no. But to see that work ethic just on the campaign trail and just going to events mixed in with Annapolis, I mean, I see it's good knowing now that it was instilled at such a young age, and so I think it should, anybody watching who has young kids should surely take advantage of that and instill that ethic that they want in your kids, and at this point, so that way when they're an adult, they've got it in them.
Well, you and I, Carl, know that we can make it fun as hard as we're working, and we've been on the campaign trail and we've knocked on some doors together, so we know that gives me an opportunity to talk about the district. So a little bit of background, 2 years into my 4-year term in the House of Delegates, I started to be encouraged by voters in Somerset, Wycomico, and Worcester County to consider stepping up and running for the state Senate.
Sure.
And I think what I was hearing is that they wanted a really strong voice for the shore. And as you know, I am very humbled to serve in the House of Delegates. I am the first person in history to represent District 38C. I like to say C for Carozza, which is the northern part of Worcester County and the eastern part of Wycomico County. And so when I was encouraged in the beginning to do this, I was asked first to consider it. So with prayer, talking to my parents in a key group, and then going out on a listening tour. This is before I even announced. I spent a lot of time under the radar, going to Crisfield, going to Princess Anne, going to Fruitland and Delmar in your district, going to the southern part of Worcester County, Snow Hill and Pocomoke, spending time in my base district in Ocean City and Ocean Pines, and just really trying to find out what the constituents, what the voters are looking for in their state senator, and making sure that I understood their priorities. And as I moved around in that listening mode, I became very uplifted and did make the decision to run for state senate. And as you know, we made the big announcement in November of 2017. So we're coming up to a year.
Right.
And it was at Ocean City Elementary School, the school that I attended. And Governor Hogan came down in person to fully endorse me for running for the state senate. We had about 300 people there. And it was one of those moments where everything just came together. And again, that, having the faith, seeing the support, knowing how hard it would be, as you mentioned, it's a lot of territory to cover.
Oh, yeah.
And going up against an incumbent who's been in office for many years is a challenge. But at that moment, knowing the task ahead, there was a peace that came over me. And I just thought, look at this. We had people that day from all 3 counties showing support. And we knew from the very beginning that we were going to make this a true grassroots campaign of all ages. And when I say of all ages, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about we have children that have been marching with us in parades, and we have up to my 80-year-old dad putting up signs and everything in between. So, that was, that definitely was a highlight.
Right. So, people kind of joke, I guess, a little bit, they about the relationship I have with Governor Hogan. That's my man. It's my dog. I've been blessed to be able to forge a friendship with him, but you have an experience with him that none of us have, and I think that may position you really well, and it has already. It's borne great fruit. But so you worked with the governor. How long ago was that? 2002, 2006?
Going back to 2003.
Yeah, so we could say the turn of the century, right?
Right, right.
Right. So what was it like working with then, L-Dog, Larry Hogan?
So you have to go back a little bit in time and remember when Bob Ehrlich was elected governor, he was the first governor, Republican governor elected in 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to assemble a team that would work together, knowing that this would be quite a challenge to basically set up government under a new Republican governor. So I was asked if I would consider giving up my position at the Pentagon. I was working for Secretary Rumsfeld at the time. And would I basically, give that position up and come home to Maryland to serve in Governor Ehrlich's administration? And Larry Hogan, of course, stepped up and joined the administration as well. You, again, have to keep in mind that this was a time where the Maryland General Assembly did not have the Republican reinforcements that we have right now. And when I say that, it was just very difficult. It was a whole cultural change. So it was a very challenging time in public service. So you really had to depend on your teammates in the administration. And this is what I learned about Larry Hogan. And it's something that, seeing it back then and watching him put it in practice today as governor, now there are no surprises. Larry Hogan is very focused. He, he has that affable, slap him on the back, have a beer, good guy, and he is. But don't let that fool you. Underneath of all of that, he is very focused on his key priorities. I watched him do this in Governor Ehrlich's administration, where he was in charge of basically placing some of our senior people in the departments across state government. And so here you have key people being placed, being vetted by Larry Hogan to know that he was basically the watch guard to make sure the people that were coming into Governor Ehrlich's administration were carrying out the priorities of Governor Ehrlich, who was elected by the people and was putting us back on a path of fiscal responsibility and responsive government. So watching him during that time and that focus, and now seeing him as governor. Now, fast forward a little bit. I had that experience working with him in Governor Ehrlich's administration. Then I had the experience when I had wrapped up my federal public service, and I knew that I wanted to stay in public service, but I didn't know what that looked like. I knew I wanted to be at home on the shore. I knew I wanted to stay in public service. I didn't know what that looked like. I heard that Larry Hogan, candidate Larry Hogan at that time, was not, this is way before he declared for governor, and he had formed the Change Maryland group. So, I got in my Jeep and I rode up to see the governor or to see the candidate. I, just reflectively call him the governor now. But I remember walking into that room, and this was in 2013. And I asked him what he was, what his plans were with Change Maryland. And exactly what he's saying today, he was saying back then. He said, I'm tired of hearing about our families and our small businesses and our retirees moving to Delaware, moving to Virginia, going to Florida, anywhere but Maryland because of the 8 years of the O'Malley administration, running up the budgets and the tax increases and the regulations and making it so hard for job creators like that original Carozza family back at Beefy's. And he said, we need to do something about it. So I immediately said, sounds like you might be running for governor. And he said, I have not made that decision yet. He said, I'm doing all my homework. I'm going to make sure this Change Maryland, that we're positioned that should we go forward, we will be successful. In the meantime, I said to him, well, it sounds to me you're going to need some partners. And there had been a newly drawn District 38C, as I mentioned, northern part of Worcester County, eastern part of Wycomico. And I said, well, I'm not going to hesitate. I see that there is an opportunity to change Maryland. That means there's an opportunity to change the shore. So I very early on went ahead and announced that I was running for delegate. Going back to Larry Hogan, when he did make his decision to run for governor, he wasn't that well known in the beginning, especially on the shore. So when I was doing my door-to-door for delegate, whether I was in Ocean Pines or Ocean City or Willards or Parsonsburg or Powellville or Pittsville, I could say not only was I running for delegate and seeking your support. But Larry Hogan was running for governor, and I wanted to be part of his team to change the shore and to change Maryland. So I actually was going door to door for Larry Hogan, when he first announced that he was running for governor. Now, with all that said, look at what Larry Hogan did during the campaign as governor, and look what he's done as governor. He was very focused, jobs and the economy. That's what he was hearing. Okay, I am going to put policies in place. I'm going to have the farmers at the table, the commercial fishermen at the table, the small business creators at the table. So when we do our policies, it's fair to all those key constituencies that are the economic drivers for the shore and for the state of Maryland. So what did he do after he was elected? He kept his promises. And I look at results.
Sure.
You look at the fact that you look at the Maryland economy, you look at our job growth, and Larry Hogan has kept his promises, and you and I have been blessed to be part of that.
No, absolutely. It's been a tremendous experience working with him the way that we have, and having the relationships with him that we do. I don't think, I know we wouldn't be as successful as we've been without having him as a partner, and that's why it's extremely important that everybody gets out and votes for him again, so we can get 4 more years of doing some really cool things.
Well, and I also want to share with the viewers a little bit about your unique relationship with Governor Larry Hogan. And it is a unique relationship because it's one based on friendship and trust. And I know what you have done. You and I have different styles, and we actually back each up. We back each other up that way. And the fact that you do pull Governor Larry Hogan aside and say, okay, we're working on these issues, and your administration is working with us, but we still need to do a little bit better here or there. And there is that trust that when you and I do go to Governor Larry Hogan and we say, okay, we know what your priorities are, and they're the same ones that we have here on the shore, and we know that there's different approaches to it. And, case in point is the situation at ECI.
Yeah.
And that's one where, I look at that situation, Carl, and I know you have your brother works down there, and it's almost like the perfect storm happened at ECI. You had correctional officers that were hitting the retirement age to begin with. You had the correctional officer that was killed in Delaware that then dampened enthusiasm to maybe go into corrections. You had the corruption case that took out 18 correctional officers. And then you have a statewide and nationwide public safety shortage across the board.
Right.
So this perfect storm hit ECI especially hard because of what happened in Delaware and because of the corruption case it took and lowered the number of our correctional officers. And you and I both realized early on that this was an acute shortage and that we would have to do more. Yes, we have to put the incentives in to hire more correctional officers. So if those are signing bonuses, job fairs, those incentives to raise those numbers. But you and I also went to Governor Hogan and said, we need to make sure we protect and support our current correctional officers, that we do not want to be losing correctional officers that are hitting that, whether they're hitting their 5-year, 10-year, 15-year mark. We cannot lose them. And they were, we know they've been burned out with the forced drafting and the mandatory overtime because you have to have them in place to protect, public safety first. But you and I went to Governor Hogan. We said, in addition to focusing on bringing in new people, we need to make sure we're protecting our current correctional officers. And Governor Hogan has done that with some of the tax exemptions that he put in place. But we're also talking about the current correctional officers, looking at some step increases to catch them up, maybe looking at the drop retirement program that other Maryland law enforcement have, so there's an incentive for them to stay even longer. So I, again, will recommit with you and working with Governor Hogan that we are going to do everything we can to make sure that our current correctional officers are protected because they're protecting us and putting public safety first.
Right. No, absolutely. And, it all goes back to relationships, and I think that we've been successful as we have been because of that. So speaking of that, we have a pretty unique delegation we work with, the 5 delegates. Chris Adams and Johnny Maltz and Cherie, you, myself, and then Wayne Hartman is coming into the fold, and District 38C, which will forever be known as C is for Carozza, because it's yours, girl. You own it. You're the first one. That means, so I guess let's have a little fun here for a minute, and I'm gonna ask you to say one thing that I guess you would admire about each of them. Not me. You take me out of the equation, but for the
Well, I think I gave you a pretty good shout out as
you did good, girl.
the head of our Wacomico delegation. And that is an important role. So, and we depend on you for that role. And when I think about my other colleagues, starting with Cherie Sample Hughes, I mean, just a class act. She's now, and people may not realize, the viewers may not know that, but she is head of the Women's Caucus in the entire Maryland General Assembly. That is quite a leadership role that she can impact not only for the shore, but for the whole state of Maryland. So I am looking forward to continuing to work with her in that position. Then you look at Chris Adams, and Chris Adams taking his business experience, the fact that he had his own run-ins as a business owner with the former administration, with regulations that were crippling his business, and willing to take that on, that inspired him to get involved himself. So it's kind of like, well, maybe I need to do something about that. And he stepped up and ran, and he became our lead on important business issues. So I want to highlight that. Johnny Maltz, Johnny, just is so connected to the people, whether it's an issue affecting the commercial fishermen or the farmers or his own business, Carpenter Street Saloon, that he has that innate ability to know, hey, this is exactly how this is affecting the average family on the shore. And so I want to give that shout out to him as well. And then we talked a little bit about Wayne Hartman, one of the new members of our delegation that will be coming on board. And I really have gotten to know Wayne, and he's a team player. And I think you'll appreciate this, because that's what you look at as the chairman of the delegation. And I especially like to give examples. So, you use that term team player. Well, what does that mean?
What's that mean? Right.
Well, in my case, Wayne Hartman, when he decided to run for office, he came to me and he asked me, he said, you've been a pretty effective delegate, and I'm running for, your seat. And he said, what advice would you give me? And I said, Wayne, you got to get out and earn it. You've got to listen. You got to do the grassroots. You have to do the door-to-door. So not only did he do the door-to-door and did it effectively, but when he was doing his door-to-door, he went into areas like Ocean Pines and Ocean City, areas that I represent in District 38C, carrying both Larry Hogan and Mary Beth Carozza's material. And what that told me is that he was willing to work for the team, trying to drive up Larry Hogan's numbers on the shore, trying to drive up my numbers in my state Senate race. And it allowed me, knowing that he was covering that those crucial areas for me, to go to the new areas. So I could spend time going to Crisfield, Princess Anne, Fruitland, Delmar, areas where they don't know me as well. So I give that as an example because he is a team player. And so we do have a very, very unique delegation, and I think that we're all playing to everybody's strengths. And I expect that to continue in the 2019 legislative session.
I heard that, lady. I heard that. So, we go back and forth to Annapolis a lot. So what's on your radio? What's coming out of your radio when you're driving to Annapolis? What are you listening to?
So what am I listening to? Okay. So I do listen to some music just to have a little bit of calming effect, just to, because
Tupac, Biggie, no.
So, I'm not gonna, if I throw out a favorite radio, but
Journey. I don't know.
But I do enjoy that. But, really, I think, what I'd like to say to the viewers is that I have worked very hard to be your strong, sure voice. I'm in all 3 counties, working as hard as I can. I commit to you to continue to do the listening, the door-to-door, to make sure not only do I understand your priorities, that I fight for your priorities on the early end, day in and day out, and I will continue to promise to be a 100% sure senator.
You know me well, because that was going to be my next thing, was say, look at the camera and give me your elevator speech, but you knocked it out of the park. So at this point, we'll close this out. I want to thank Mary Beth for coming by, and thank you for watching and laughing as I try to pretend to be an interview reporter guy. Dr. Phil, I am not, but I got too much hair. But again, thanks for coming by. Thanks for checking us out. I want to give a huge shout out to Pack 14 for this opportunity to have our views expressed over the airwaves. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media platform. Give us a share. And thanks to Billy Earl again. I'm sure that this will be the last time you'll see me sit in this seat. But in the meantime, thanks for coming by. Wake up, make it happen, and repeat.